This is the story of a quiet man who lived his life in straight lines: work, home, church, repeat. Tunde Afolayan was disciplined, respected, and utterly alone. But one night, when his friends dragged him into a mysterious Lagos club with no name, his carefully folded piece began to unravel. Inside those red walls, music breathed, shadows danced, and a beautiful woman with golden eyes whispered his name. In this folktale, you will see how loneliness can summon spirits, how joy can become a curse, and how one dance with darkness can echo forever. Tunde Afolayan was 31 years old, and his life was made of straight lines: work, home, church, repeat. He was the kind of man whose neighbors described with respect and pity at the same time. Respect because he was disciplined. Pity because discipline looked too much like loneliness when you lived alone. Every morning, he left his small one-bedroom apartment at 6:45 a.m. sharp, wearing the same neatly ironed shirts, the same brown leather shoes that had carried him through years of surviving Lagos. He worked as an accountant in a logistics company in Acacia, where his days were filled with numbers that never spoke and fluorescent lights that never slept. People liked him well enough, but they never really knew him. Tunde smiled when expected, laughed when required, but inside, he felt like a man who had lived too long in silence. His co-workers joked that he was married to spreadsheets, and he never denied it. It was easier to pretend he was just focused than to admit that he didn't know how to live anymore. To him, joy was something that belonged to other people, people who could afford it. His mother used to tell him, "Omo mi, laughter is medicine." Even God rested after 6 days. But after she died, something inside him stayed in mourning. Sundays were his only escape. He sang in the choir with a soft baritone voice that carried sorrow more than melody. He believed in God deeply, not the loud, dramatic kind of belief that filled the air with hallelujahs, but the quiet, private kind, where faith was a survival tool. His pastor once told him, "Tunde, you are too young to be this old." He had smiled at that, but deep down he knew the pastor was right. Life had made him tired before it made him happy. The city itself seemed to feed on exhaustion, traffic, rent, deadlines, bills, an endless cycle of noise that left no room for living. And so, Tunde learned to fold his emotions neatly, like his shirts, and place them on a shelf where dust could settle without disturbance. He thought that was peace. He didn't know it was a slow kind of dying. The night everything changed began like any other dull, predictable, ordinary. The office air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and overworked air conditioning. Around 7 p.m., his boss called everyone for a quick meeting. "Team, we have a small announcement," she said, smiling in that managerial way that promised either good news or more work. "Tunde has officially been promoted to senior accountant. Let's celebrate him." The office erupted in cheers and applause. Tunde smiled shyly, murmured thanks, and tried to sit back down, but his colleagues wouldn't have it. "No, you're not escaping tonight," said Funky, the HR girl who loved loud makeup and louder laughter. "You're coming out with us, even if we have to drag you." Everyone joined in, clapping and teasing. "Just one night out, bro. You deserve it," shouted Dele, his closest coworker. Tunde tried to refuse. He had a church program the next morning, and he didn't even own the kind of clothes people wore to clubs, but his resistance only made him more determined. They kept chanting, "Tunde, Tunde, Tunde," until he gave up and nodded with an awkward grin. The room burst into cheers again, and someone shouted, "We're taking him to that new place. You know the one? The one with no name." They laughed, and he laughed too, pretending not to feel uneasy about that last part. By 10 p.m., Tunde stood outside the office gate, waiting as Della's car pulled up. Lagos nightlife had begun to hum, street vendors selling suya, engines growling, neon lights flickering against the restless sky. He hadn't been out this late in years. He sat quietly in the back seat while the others sang along to Afrobeats, their laughter mixing with traffic horns and the faint scent of rain. The city looked different at night, alive, dangerous, seductive. They drove for nearly an hour before Dele slowed down. "This is it," he said, pointing. Tunde looked up. There was no signboard, no crowd, just a narrow alley and a red door glowing faintly in the dark. "Are you sure this is a club?" Tunde asked, frowning. "Guy, relax." Funky said, "Already stepping out. This is the hottest underground spot right now. You won't find it on Google." Tunde hesitated, his heart ticking faster. The air smelled faintly of iron and perfume. He wanted to say no, to tell them he changed his mind, but then the door opened on its own, slow, deliberate, like it had been expecting him. From inside came a deep rhythmic bass, slow and hypnotic, like a heartbeat. Someone laughed from within, a sound too beautiful to belong to anything ordinary. Della turned back and grinned. One night, bro. Just one. As Tunde stepped closer, the ground beneath him seemed to hum in sync with the music dot. The red light brushed across his face, warm and strange, and for a fleeting second, he thought he saw something move behind the door, a shadow, or maybe a silhouette of a woman. He blinked, and it was gone. You're thinking too much, Funke teased, pulling his hand. Come and enjoy small, Mr. Accountant. The others were already inside, laughing, disappearing into the red haze. Tunde looked up once more at the night sky, at the blinking streetlights, and the moon half hidden by clouds. He took a deep breath and crossed the threshold dot. The door closed behind him with a soft click, final, absolute. And though he didn't know it yet, that was the sound of the world he knew being sealed away. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered a warning he didn't understand. But it was too late. The music had already found him. The moment Tunde crossed that threshold, the world behind him ceased to exist. The air was thicker inside, perfumed with smoke, sweat, and something sweet that felt too ancient to belong to Earth. Red lights pulsed along the walls, moving like veins under skin, syncing perfectly with the heavy rhythm that throbbed through the floor. The music wasn't loud, it was alive. It wrapped itself around him, whispering in tones he couldn't quite recognize. His co-workers cheered as they found a booth, but even their laughter sounded distant, blurred, like an echo from another dimension. The club didn't look normal. It stretched too far, as if the space had no end. From the ceiling hung hundreds of glass orbs glowing faintly, each filled with dancing sparks of light that seemed to pulse with the beat. And yet, what unsettled Tunde most wasn't the sight, it was the feeling. Every beat of the drum seemed to tap directly against his chest, syncing with his own heartbeat until he couldn't tell where the song ended and he began. He touched the wall absently and jerked back. It felt warm, like human skin. At the far end of the room was a stage draped in black velvet. A single spotlight burned there, unmoving, waiting. People filled the dance floor, laughing, twirling, sweating. But the strange thing was, their faces didn't seem real. Each time he blinked, they looked slightly different. Eyes too sharp, smiles too wide, movements too smooth. Della nudged him with a grin. Guy, you see? This place no be normal club-o. Tunde tried to laugh it off, but his throat was dry. Funky returned from the bar with a glowing drink, the color of molten gold. Try this, she said, pressing it into his hand. He hesitated, staring at the strange shimmer. It's just a cocktail, she teased, sipping hers. He took a cautious gulp. It burned, not painfully, but in a way that made his veins hum. His heartbeat quickened, and suddenly the music felt louder, brighter, closer. The room seemed to tilt slightly, and for a second, he thought he heard someone whisper his name, soft, delicate, from somewhere deep in the music. Tunde. He spun around, but no one was there. Dele and Funky were laughing at a joke he couldn't hear. He forced a smile and sat down, but his mind was spiraling. Every sound, every flicker of light seemed alive and aware of him. The longer he stayed, the more he felt like he wasn't supposed to be there, or worse, that he was. Then, everything stopped. The lights dimmed, the laughter died, and the music fell silent, mid-beat, like it had been cut by an unseen hand. The crowd turned toward the stage in perfect unison. The silence was so heavy, it rang in his ears. The spotlight brightened, and out of the shadows stepped a woman. She was tall, cloaked in red silk that shimmered like blood under light. Her hair was black as midnight, her skin pale like moonlight reflected on water, and her eyes burned gold. Tunde froze. He couldn't move, couldn't think. She smiled, not at the crowd, but directly at him. Welcome, she said, her voice soft but carrying through the room like a melody. The crowd erupted in applause, chanting something he didn't understand. Her gaze never left him. Tonight, she said, we dance for the forgotten and welcome the one who never partied. The crowd cheered louder. Funke laughed and nudged him. She's talking about you, she shouted. But Tunde couldn't laugh. The woman's voice was echoing inside his head now, wrapping around his thoughts. You've run from joy too long, Tunde Afolayan. Let me teach you what it feels like to live. His drink trembled in his hand. He hadn't told anyone his surname. The woman began to dance, slow, hypnotic, every move precise and fluid. The crowd swayed as if bound by invisible strings. The rhythm returned, heavier this time, deeper, pulsing like the heartbeat of something buried beneath the earth. Tunde felt it pulling him forward, dragging his spirit into its rhythm. Come, she whispered, though her lips didn't move. The crowd parted, forming a path between them. Dele laughed, thinking it was a performance. Go on, bro. You lucky but Tunde wasn't laughing. His feet moved on their own, each step sinking to the music until he was standing before her. She reached out and touched his cheek. Her fingers were cold, ice and fire in one. Do you know why you were chosen? She asked softly. He shook his head, trembling. She smiled, tilting her head. Because your soul is quiet, and quiet souls are the loudest when awakened. Her palm rested on his chest, and in that instant, the music exploded. Lights flared. The floor rippled like water. The walls pulsed with crimson light. For a split second, he saw flashes, faces screaming, shadows dancing, eyes watching from the darkness. Then everything went black. When Tunde opened his eyes, the club was gone. He stood alone in a vast red desert under a sky filled with spinning stars. The music was still there, faint now, echoing across the horizon. He turned in circles, trying to understand. The red woman stood a few feet away, watching him with an expression that was almost sorrowful. "This is where joy brings those who never seek it," she said. "A place between worlds, where those who deny life must dance until they remember it." Tunde tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't come. She reached out her hand again. "Dance with me," she said gently, "and maybe you'll find what you lost." He hesitated, but then something deep within him, the part that had forgotten how to feel, whispered yes. He took her hand. The music returned, slow and beautiful, and as they moved, the world around him began to change. The desert filled with laughter. Shadows became people, his co-workers, his mother, strangers, all smiling, all watching. He began to feel something he hadn't felt in years, joy. But just as the feeling bloomed, her eyes turned dark. "Remember," she whispered, "every joy has its price." Her smile widened unnaturally, and the world began to shake. The laughter turned to screams. The stars fell from the sky. The last thing he saw before darkness swallowed him again was her golden eyes, burning through the void. The sound of rain woke Tunde, though when his eyes opened, there was no rain, only the hollow echo of it inside his head. He was slumped in his car, parked by a lonely stretch of road on the outskirts of Lagos. The sun had just begun to rise, pale and weak, casting soft light across his face. His shirt was torn, his shoes were gone, and his body felt like it had been dipped in ice. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was or how he got there. Then it all came rushing back: the music, the woman, the red desert. He touched his chest instinctively, and that was when he felt it. A burning mark just below his collarbone, raised like a brand. It pulsed faintly beneath his skin, glowing a dull crimson whenever he whispered a prayer. He gasped and scrambled for his phone, but the screen refused to turn on, no matter how many times he pressed the button. The world outside was eerily quiet. No birds, no cars, no wind, just the faint hum of the city somewhere far away, like a memory. He stepped out of the car, trembling, his mind trying to stitch reason into madness. "It was just a dream," he muttered. But the mark on his chest burned again, sharp, deliberate, as if answering him. He clutched it, wincing, and that was when he heard it, a faint, melodic hum. The same tune the woman had danced to in the club, now drifting faintly through the air, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. At first, Tunde thought the music was just in his head, a leftover echo from the night before. But when he got home, it followed him. It came from his bathroom mirror, from the TV when it was off, from the hum of his refrigerator. It was faint, barely audible, but it was there. And whenever he tried to pray, the sound grew louder. On the third day, his pastor came to visit. "You haven't been in church, my brother. You look troubled." Tunde hesitated, then lifted his shirt to show him the mark. The pastor froze. It wasn't just a burn anymore, it had begun to spread, branching like red veins across his chest. The older man's eyes widened. "Who did this to you?" Tunde shook his head, tears welling up. "I don't know, Pastor. I went out just once. There was this woman." He stopped when he saw the pastor's face grow pale. "Describe her," the man said quietly. Tunde did every detail. The red dress, the glowing eyes, the smile that felt older than the world. The pastor took a step back and whispered a name, one Tunde didn't recognize. "I'm Oran," he said, "the daughter of the air. Some call her the mistress of forgotten joy. She lures weary souls with laughter and dance, and binds them to her music." He began to pray immediately, his voice trembling. But the moment the prayer left his lips, every light in the house flickered violently. The pastor shouted louder, commanding whatever it was to leave. The air turned cold. The mark on Tunde's chest flared like fire, and from the mirror behind them, a woman's laughter rang out, soft, seductive, endless. The mirror cracked down the center, splitting her reflection into two. From that day, Tunde stopped sleeping. Whenever he closed his eyes, he found himself back in that red desert, dancing under a sky full of falling stars. The woman would be there, smiling, whispering promises in a language he didn't understand. Each time, she looked more human, more beautiful, more real. "You're changing," she'd tell him. "Soon, you'll remember how to dance forever." He'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, only to find the mark spreading further. His coworkers noticed the change, his sunken eyes, the strange way he sometimes hummed when no music was playing. "Guy, you good?" Dele asked one afternoon. Tunde just stared at his computer screen, fingers trembling. "Do you ever hear songs when there's no music?" he asked quietly. Dele frowned, uneasy. "Bro, maybe you need rest." But rest was impossible. The nights bled into days, and the world began to lose its shape. Reflections moved when he didn't. His shadow sometimes lingered a few seconds after he walked away. And every once in a while, he'd catch a glimpse of her, the woman in red, standing across the street, or behind him in the glass of his office window. Always watching. Always smiling. One evening, when he finally broke down and begged God to take the curse away, his phone rang. He hesitated, then answered. On the other end, a woman's voice sang, the same haunting melody from the club. "You left too soon," she whispered. "The song isn't over." By the end of the week, Tunde wasn't sure if he was alive or just dreaming through another layer of her world. The lines between the natural and the supernatural had blurred beyond recognition. He returned to where the club once stood, desperate for answers. But all that remained was an abandoned building with walls covered in soot. The red door was still there, half buried in ash. He reached for it, his hand trembling. The moment his fingers touched the handle, the mark on his chest blazed like molten metal, and a whisper filled his ears. "You came back," the voice said. The ground trembled, and the air turned thick with heat. "You never left." She continued. The red door creaked open on its own, revealing not darkness, but a dim, endless hall of mirrors. Each reflection showed a different version of Tunde, laughing, crying, dancing, screaming. And in every single one, the woman in red stood beside him. "You wanted to live," she said from somewhere behind him. "Now you will, through me." Before he could run, her hands, cold and burning all at once, wrapped around his shoulders. The last thing he saw was his reflection smiling while he wasn't. Then silence. The mirror shattered. The door slammed shut. And when morning came, there was no sign of Tunde, only the faint sound of distant music echoing through the empty street. The first person to see him was Dele. It had been 2 weeks since Tunde vanished, and the office still whispered about it in uneasy tones. They'd found his car on the outskirts of the city, engine cold, keys still in the ignition, but no trace of him. The police said maybe he ran away, stress, depression, pressure from work. But Dele knew better. Tunde wasn't the type to run. That morning, Dele stayed late at the office, going through old emails when something flickered on his laptop screen. Reflection, faint and brief. He leaned closer, thinking it was just a fluorescent light. Then the screen froze, and behind his own reflection, he saw Tunde standing there, pale, expressionless, wearing the same clothes he disappeared in. Dele jumped back, heart pounding, but before he could react, the speakers on his desk began to hum, a low, vibrating sound that rose into a melody he'd heard before. That same strange song from the night of the club. The lights flickered. The air grew heavy, and he swore he heard Tunde whisper his name. When he screamed, the power went out completely. By the time security rushed in, the room was dark, and the only thing left on the screen was a faint red handprint. The next day, the whisper spread. Someone swore they saw Tunde at the bus stop near Yaba, standing still under the morning rain, humming softly. Another said she saw him inside a mirror at the barbershop, looking right at her as her reflection brushed past. Soon, rumors flooded social media. #Theming Red Light Club. People posted grainy clips of a man who looked exactly like Tunde, appearing briefly in reflections, elevator doors, car mirrors, even puddles. Always humming. Always watching. Theories spread like wildfire. Some said it was an elaborate prank. Others claimed it was a spirit-haunting Lagos nightlife. One thread went viral after a girl shared a video from her bathroom mirror. Tunde's face appeared behind her for half a second, then vanished. "He smiled at me," she captioned, but the mirror smiled first. Before long, online creators started visiting the old red club site, filming themselves knocking on the sealed door. Some swore they heard music inside. One influencer live streamed from there and disappeared midstream. The video ended abruptly when her camera fell to the ground, still recording the faint sound of laughter. That night, the red door was gone again. In its place was a clean wall, as if it had never existed. Meanwhile, far from the noise and online hysteria, Funky couldn't sleep. She'd been one of the last people to see Tunde alive, and guilt gnawed at her. The night he vanished replayed in her mind, the red lights, the drink, the woman. She hadn't told anyone the full truth. She'd seen the woman too, standing by the stage, watching Tunde like a predator. Funky had thought it was part of the show until the woman's eyes had met hers. There was something ancient in that gaze, like recognition. Now alone in her apartment, Funky sat staring at her mirror, trembling. The power had gone out, and her phone light cast eerie shadows on the walls. Then she heard it, faint at first, then clearer. The same melody. Her heart raced. "No," she whispered, backing away. But the song grew louder, and her reflection began to move, not following her, but dancing. Slowly, gracefully, in time with the invisible music. "Stop," she screamed. The reflection smiled, Tunde's smile. Then the woman in red appeared beside him in the glass, her eyes glowing softly. "He's with me now," she whispered. The mirror cracked, and the music stopped. Funke dropped to her knees, shaking uncontrollably, whispering prayers that melted into sobs. By morning, she packed her bags and fled the city, leaving everything behind. But the moment her bus crossed the city limits, her phone lit up on its own. A message. No number. Just 2 words. Final song. Weeks passed, and the story of Tunde Afolayan became an urban legend, told in whispers, reshared as creepy TikToks and YouTube stories. But in certain corners of the city, strange things kept happening. Clubs began reporting sudden blackouts at midnight, followed by the faint sound of laughter and a flash of red light. Bartenders swore they'd see a shadowy figure by the DJ booth, humming softly before disappearing. Churches nearby began holding nightly vigils, praying against the spirit of the dance that never ends. Some say if you pass by a mirror at 3:03 a.m. and hear faint music, you should never look, because the song isn't meant for the living. Others claim that every few weeks, a red door appears somewhere new, a door with no building attached, no handle, no hinges. And behind it, if you listen closely enough, you'll hear her voice whispering, "Come dance." And somewhere beneath the city, maybe in the reflection of a puddle or in the hum of an empty club speaker, Tunde still dances. His eyes are no longer his own. His smile doesn't belong to the man he once was. They say if you ever see him in a mirror, don't look away. Because it's not your reflection anymore, it's his. And once he sees you, the song will begin again. Tunde hadn't slept for 3 days. The night stretched endlessly, filled with whispers that curled around his mind like smoke. Every mirror in his apartment was covered with cloth now, but it didn't stop her voice from finding him. "You left before the final song," she would hum, her tone sweet, sorrowful, patient. He tried everything, prayer, fasting, even holy water, but nothing silenced the rhythm pulsing beneath his skin. It was faint at first, like a heartbeat that wasn't his. But as dawn broke that morning, it grew louder, synchronized with his breath, his steps, his trembling pulse. Something inside him knew what he had to do. He had to go back to where it began, back to the red door. The drive felt unreal, the world outside dull and faded, as though sunlight refused to touch him. Logos traffic thinned unnaturally. Streets that should have been noisy stood silent, dust swaying like mist. He followed the road he barely remembered, guided not by sight, but by sound, the echo of the music buried in his memory. When he finally stopped, he almost didn't recognize the place. The building stood at the edge of an abandoned block, its walls cracked and stained by time. There was no sign of life, no laughter, no smoke. Yet the air carried a faint scent, perfume and ashes. Where the glowing red door had once stood, there was only a dull, blackened outline on the wall. Tunde approached slowly, his breath visible even in the heat. The bricks were cold under his palm. He whispered, "Is this where you are?" A soft wind stirred the dust, revealing something carved into the wall, words scratched deep and rough. "We danced for the dot beneath it," a faint circle, identical to the mark on his chest. As his fingers traced the symbol, a tremor shot through his arm. The air thickened. Somewhere in the distance, faint music began, distorted, hollow, as if played from underwater. He stumbled back, heart hammering, but the melody grew clearer, wrapping around him, dragging him closer to the wall. The ashes at the base began to shift, swirling in tiny spirals. He tried to run, but his feet felt anchored. The mark on his chest flared, glowing red hot, and he screamed, a sound swallowed instantly by the air. The wall trembled. From within the bricks came a whisper, soft and cold. "You came back, my love." Tunde fell to his knees. "Please," he gasped. "Let me go." The laughter that answered him was not cruel. It was gentle, almost human. The ashes rose like a storm, forming vague shapes that twirled and shimmered. The wall began to pulse faintly, light bleeding through the cracks, revealing the faint outline of the door again. Not painted this time, but alive, glowing with soft, living red. The handle appeared last, twisting on its own. Tunde's hands shook. He wanted to run, to pray, to scream. But instead, he reached out. The moment his fingers touched the door, his chest mark burned so violently he thought his heart had exploded. He heard the music again, no longer distant. It was here, surrounding him. The red door creaked open an inch, releasing a gust of warm air that smelled of roses and smoke. The voice came once more, clearer this time, like a song carried on the wind. "Dance with me, Tunde." The red door opened with a sigh, releasing a faint warmth that brushed Tunde's skin like a breath. The world beyond it wasn't darkness or light, it was something between. A haze of crimson mist drifted across a vast, endless hall. The air shimmered like heat rising from a desert road, carrying the faint scent of roses and smoke. There was no ceiling, no floor, only reflections upon reflections, each one rippling softly as if made of liquid glass. And in the center of it all, she stood, the woman in red. Her dress flowed like living fire, glowing faintly under an unseen rhythm. Her eyes, deep and calm, caught the flicker of the unseen lights and turned them gold. When she smiled, it was neither joy nor malice, it was longing. "You came back," she whispered, her voice soft as silk and heavy as memory. The music began again, the same melody that had followed Tunde since that night, slow, pulsing, alive. But this time, it wasn't coming from the air. It came from him. His heartbeat was the drum, his breath, the flute, his trembling steps, the rhythm. The woman raised her hand, palm open, inviting. "You left before the final song," she said, "and songs without endings become curses." Tunde took a step forward, his shoes echoing softly on the invisible floor. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why me?" She tilted her head, studying him the way a dancer studies a partner she already knows too well. "Because you listened," she said. "Because you wanted to forget for one night, and the night never forgets." Her words wrapped around him like music, pulling him closer. He felt the mark on his chest pulse, faint light bleeding through his shirt. The sound swelled, drums from nowhere, laughter from the distance, the hum of invisible dancers circling unseen. For a moment, Tunde thought he heard his own name woven into the rhythm, whispered in time with the beat. He fell to his knees. "Please," he said, his voice shaking. "I just wanted to live. I didn't know." Her expression softened. She moved toward him, her bare feet gliding soundlessly over the mirrored floor. "None of you ever do," she murmured. "You think you come for joy, but joy is just another name for surrender." She crouched before him, her face inches from his. "You prayed to be seen, to be free, to rest. And now?" She pressed a hand gently over his heart. "You will." The music deepened. The mark beneath her palm flared faintly, not with pain, but peace. The walls of red mist began to shimmer, vibrating with light. Shapes appeared, silhouettes twirling gracefully, arms raised, faces smiling. The dancers, his colleagues, the ones who'd gone missing. Their movements were slow, serene, endless. Tunde stood, eyes wide. "They're still dancing?" he whispered. She nodded. "The song doesn't end here," she said. "It continues where silence begins." Her hand slid from his chest to his palm. Her skin was cool, almost weightless. The moment they touched, the rhythm in his body aligned with hers, two heartbeats merging into one. The light around them shifted. Every reflection in the room began to move, showing scenes from the world outside, the city, the roads, the people passing by unaware. Somewhere, a police siren wailed faintly. The reflection of Tunde's car appeared, engine still running, headlights cutting through fog. "This is your last verse," she whispered. The melody rose. The dancers began to spin faster, their shadows blending until they became ribbons of red light weaving through the air. The woman turned toward him, eyes glowing faintly. "Finish the dance, Tunde," she said, "and I'll let you rest." He hesitated, then took her hand fully. The instant their palms met, the hall flooded with sound, a wave of music too vast to comprehend, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. For a moment, he felt weightless, not falling, not floating, just becoming. The mirrors rippled, their surfaces turning from reflection to memory, every laugh, every step, every prayer he'd ever whispered flashing before him like fragments of a song reaching its final note, and then silence. The music stopped mid-beat. The red mist folded in on itself, swallowing the dancers, the reflections, the light. The door closed softly behind him. At dawn, a passing officer found a car parked by a deserted road, engine still running, door slightly open. Inside lay only a folded jacket and resting on the driver's seat, a single red rose. No one ever claimed the car, though stories spread fast. Some said a strange humming could still be heard from its engine at night, faintly rhythmic like a heartbeat syncing with the wind. Others swore they'd seen a red door appear briefly in the rearview mirrors of passing drivers, just a flicker of color, gone before you could blink. In the weeks that followed, a new rumor emerged among Lagos nightlifers. They said there was a club that had no name, no location, a place that appeared only when someone desperate enough whispered, "Just one night won't hurt." Those who claimed to find it described a faint red glow and a woman dancing alone in the center of the room, her smile both welcoming and sad. And if you listen closely, beneath the bass and laughter, you could hear another voice, soft and familiar, singing along, a man's voice keeping time with the beat. They called it the final song. And the elders, the ones who spoke in proverbs, began to warn again. Not every music is meant for your ears. Some songs are doors, and some doors never close. Hey, my Afritales family, I just want to take a moment to say a big thank you for all the love, comments, and support you showed on my last story. Every view, like, and word of encouragement means the world to me. You've turned Afritales by Sophyjay into a beautiful community that keeps the spirit of African folktales alive. And to all my new viewers, you're so welcome here. Don't forget to subscribe, join the family, and comment the country you're watching from. I love knowing where my stories are reaching. With love and gratitude, Sophyjay.